Lord Mountbatten and his wife were England's greatest power couple, yet the FBI file on them hid bombshell secrets. Newspapers reported on the couple's constant affairs, but the files revealed their depravities went so much deeper than that. The Battenbergs were a prominent British family, close relatives to the royal family themselves. Prince Louis was born in 1900, a second cousin of King George VI, illustrating his immense privilege from birth. Upon his baptism, his parents chose godparents from the highest of European royalty. His godmother was Queen Victoria, his maternal great-grandmother. His godfather was his second cousin, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, who would end up being the last reigning monarch of Tsarist Russia before the Revolution. Throughout his childhood, Louis often visited Russia, becoming intimately familiar with the imperial family. The young man grew infatuated with his cousin, Grand Duchess Maria, and his romantic feelings lasted the rest of his life. He kept a photo of her at his bedside until his final days. Louis didn't socialise outside his familial circle much. In fact, he was homeschooled for the first 10 years of his life, a practice not uncommon among royals. At the age of 10, he transferred to the prestigious Lockers Park boarding school before attending the Royal Naval College a few weeks shy of his 13th birthday. But with tensions rising in Europe, his family name became a burden. In the face of rising British nationalism and anti-German sentiment as a result of World War I, King George V officially changed the name of the British royal family from the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to Windsor. German-named relatives followed suit, and Battenberg became the anglicised Mountbatten. Louis enlisted in the Royal Navy at the age of just 16, taking a post as a midshipman on the battlecruiser HMS Lion. The young lord actually saw some action in August 1916, when the cruiser found itself marred in a naval battle. He transferred to the HMS Queen Elizabeth toward the end of the war, but as the conflict winded down, his ambitions grew. Specialising in communications, the plucky young lord rose through the ranks, eventually landing his first command of a naval cruiser in 1934. Of course, this wasn't due so much to skill as it was his connections. Shortly after World War I ended, Lord Mountbatten accompanied the future King Edward on a royal tour of Australia, and on subsequent tours to Japan and India. During these trips, the two formed a close relationship. He also had a close relationship with another eventual titanic figure, the current King of Great Britain, Charles III. Charles was Mountbatten's great-nephew, and the Lord had a deep influence on the young royal. Charles affectionately referred to him as his honorary grandfather, and Mountbatten encouraged Charles to enjoy the bachelor life, something he himself had a hard time letting go of. Mountbatten married heiress and socialite Edwina Ashley on July 18, 1922. Shortly after their nuptials, the couple embarked on a honeymoon across Europe and North America. While in California at the tail end of their tour, the newlyweds met Charlie Chaplin and starred in one of his silent movies, Nice and Friendly, which ultimately never saw theatrical release. But things would not remain nice and friendly with the couple for long. Mountbatten would later admit that he and his wife spent all their married lives getting into other people's beds. In 1921, industrial unrest was on the rise in Britain amid protests and strikes over poor working conditions. Mountbatten, leading a platoon of stokers, was to quash the strikes and restore order. The platoon was as bumbling as their leader, with many of them having no experience with a rifle. But as usual, Mountbatten's own lack of skill didn't seem to hinder him. With his focus on naval communications, he gained an increasing interest in technological development and a fascination with gadgets. In 1924, he enrolled in the Portsmouth Signals School and briefly studied electronics at the Royal Naval College in Greenwich. His knowledge and advancements through naval ranks positioned him well for the next seismic conflict. With the outbreak of World War II in 1939, Mountbatten took command of the HMS Kelly, a vessel which became known for its exciting exploits. The Lord saw considerable action throughout the conflict, particularly in Norway, the English Channel and the Mediterranean. But the action wasn't necessarily heroic. Mountbatten's ship became infamous for its commander's oafish mistakes, and many were unimpressed with his leadership. On one occasion, the buffoonish lord sailed the Kelly directly into a minefield before ramming it into another British ship. His bumbling command earned Mountbatten the nickname the Master of Disaster. Clearly in his role because of his social position, Lord Mountbatten nonetheless managed to launder his reputation through his connections. During the Battle of Crete, the Kelly was finally sunk by German dive bombers. During a period of relative inactivity in 1941, Mountbatten flew to Pearl Harbor for a tour 3 months before its bombing by the Japanese. To his credit, he'd expressed shock at the lack of preparedness at the base and predicted that the Japanese would launch a surprise attack. This gained him the respect of the UK's highest commander. In 1942, Mountbatten was tasked with planning an attack known as the Dieppe Raid. In true Master of Disaster fashion, the raid was a huge failure with a nearly 60% casualty rate. But as was usually the case, he continued to fail upwards. In August 1943, Winston Churchill himself promoted the Lord to a massively important position. Attaining the rank of acting full admiral, Mountbatten received the role of Supreme Allied Commander in Southeast Asia. Luckily, there were responsible people there to rein him in. He continued to plan recklessly in Southeast Asia, but met resistance at every level of command. Pitching multiple impractical ideas for ill-advised amphibious assaults, most of his proposals were sidelined by much more experienced planning staff. But Mountbatten found other ways to embarrass himself. He attended the 1945 Potsdam Conference, an event also attended by Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Seeking an official invitation to the Soviet Union, Mountbatten attempted to woo Stalin by informing him of his connections to the Russian imperial family, the very rulers Stalin had helped to overthrow. Bafflingly, Mountbatten received some very high honours for his service after the war. Along with various naval awards and decorations for service, he attained the titles of Viscount and later Earl for his contributions to the Empire. These were purely symbolic, however, and in reality, the powers that be wanted him out of the way. On February 20th, 1947, Mountbatten received appointment as Viceroy of India. Though ostensibly given the job because of his experience in the region, some have speculated that the British government wanted to avoid his meddling in domestic affairs. Regardless of the reasons for his appointment, Mountbatten faced a monumental task: the overseeing of India's transition to an independent country free of Britain's rule. With a requested deadline of June 30th, 1948, Mountbatten received very specific instructions. Reflecting Britain's new, more subtle 20th century colonial ambitions, higher-ups instructed him to do everything in his power to avoid partition and preserve a united India. But he was also given flexibility to adapt to the situation to make Britain look as good as possible throughout the ordeal. Mountbatten touched down in India on March 22nd, 1947. Immediately upon his arrival, riots broke out in Delhi, Bombay and Rawalpindi in response to what many saw as the inappropriate meddling of the British ruling class in Indian affairs. Sensing the volatility of the situation, the imperious lord was anxious to get things over with. Mountbatten's advisors favoured a gradual transfer of independence, but the lord felt differently. Assessing the situation on the ground, he believed gradual transfer would result in civil war and decided quick and orderly was the way to go. The global ramifications of his decision reverberate to this day. Mediating between Hindu and Muslim leaders within India, Mountbatten finally concluded that the best course of action was to partition the country into the two independent nations of India and Pakistan. Many leaders and citizens of the region expressed their opposition to this, but the Lord soldiered on, with partition officially occurring on August 15, 1947. Mountbatten, excited by the prospect of statecraft, attempted to insert himself into the formation of these two new nations in various ways. Among the many opponents of Mountbatten's partition, perhaps the most notable was Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was insistent that India remain united and met Mountbatten to try and convince him. The Indian leader even proposed inviting Muslim leader and eventual Pakistan founder Muhammad Ali Jinnah to form a central government, but Mountbatten never even relayed this offer to Jinnah. The pompous lord seemed too blinded by his own self-importance. Mountbatten later recounted his feelings on the night of partition. He said that he was alone in his study at the Viceroy's mansion and that for a few minutes felt himself the most powerful man on earth. Following partition, there were mass migrations as Muslims fled India and Hindus left Pakistan. Due to Mountbatten's hastening of the process, there was much disruption and loss of life. His bumbling once again led to misery for everyone but him, and his undeserved success continued. Some nationalists in India were satisfied with Mountbatten's decision, and on August 15, 1947, at the request of the new Indian Prime Minister, Mountbatten became the first Governor-General of independent India, adding further to his already dizzying list of titles. Overseeing the political integration of the new state, he managed to convince many peripheral princely states to join the centralised Indian government, gaining him some admirers and many critics. With his tenure as Governor-General winding down, Mountbatten began to receive an increasingly positive reception from post-independence Indian leadership. He received warm welcomes during subsequent trips to India throughout his life. The same could not be said for Pakistan, however, where Mountbatten has remained largely despised due to his perceived hostile attitude towards the country. Mountbatten returned to the UK after concluding his work in India and resumed his naval career. He continued to receive promotions throughout the 50s, serving his final posting as First Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff from 1955 to 59, a position held by his father 40 years previously. Mountbatten's wife, Edwina, died in 1960 at the age of 58. Her widowed husband wasted no time getting back out there. The Lord became notorious for his many relationships with much younger women following his wife's passing, including a long-running affair with actress Shirley MacLaine. These liaisons were not exactly clandestine, but some of Mountbatten's other affairs were, and for a scandalous reason. Throughout his life, and indeed after, rumours swirled around Lord Mountbatten's bedroom proclivities. Some sources claimed that he had a perversion for young boys, and made credible accusations that he ran a trafficking ring for boys in Ireland. In 2019, declassified FBI files showed that not only had the Bureau tracked his extramarital activities, it called Mountbatten and his wife persons of extremely low morals, and had knowledge of his illicit interest in younger boys. Mountbatten decided to settle into retirement by the 1970s. In his old age, he acquired a summer home in the northwest of Ireland, where he would spend much of his time fishing in his boat. Situated not far from the Northern Ireland border, the area would make him an easy target. On the night of August 26, 1979, IRA member Thomas McMahon snuck onto Mountbatten's boat and planted a radio-controlled bomb. The next morning, Mountbatten and a party of relatives embarked on a fishing trip, but just a few hundred yards from the shore, the bomb detonated, killing Mountbatten, his 14-year-old grandson, and a 15-year-old local crew member. The 83-year-old Dowager Lady Doreen Brabourne, also present on board, died from her injuries the following day. Thanks for watching History Exposé. If you love uncovering the best stories in history, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring with us. Don't forget to visit our main page, Factinate, for more incredible facts about everything.